G'day, I'm Ash. Welcome yourselves back to War Thunder. Now, I would have other aircraft to cover, the Su-9 and the Mirage, but I honestly can't be bothered. And with the April Fool's event coming up soon, there's plenty of other content, especially with the crafting event itself, to cover later down the line. But today I thought I'd get this one out the way. This is the Attacker FB.2, also known as possibly the worst premium that you can buy in Ixwa I Had a Stroke. In fact, it's well past its due date, or at least this aircraft. Could have been a regular in-tree vehicle. I have no idea why they made it specifically a premium, because this thing costs an astounding 8,020 golden birds. And for that price, you're getting something that is mediocre at rank 5 battle rating 7.0, and it's really only got bombs and some HVAR rockets. There isn't really any in between. Sure, it does have 412mm cannons. However, they are, wing mounted. They're not centrally mounted. And being a tail dragger, this thing takes an awful lot of time to take off from a runway. That being said, though, what's the difference between that and its predecessor? Now, I covered the predecessor in a video in 2017, but the Attacker Mark 1 actually came out, I believe, where does it say? Came out in update 1.49 Weapons of Victory. Now, that update came out in 30th of April 2015, so a long bloody time ago. This was back in the day when the Sea Jesus, also known as the Sea Meteor, was the king of top-tier jets with P-80s and I think some of the early Sabres and also the MiG-15. This patch that introduced the first version of this aircraft also included the Firefly, the Seafire, the Sea Fury, the Attacker, the Canberra Cockpit, the Sea Hurricanes, and basically completed a bunch of Fleet Air Arm aircraft. Nowadays, with the addition of the Attacker FB.2, I believe this was just a thing for them to make some money, because it's not necessarily overpowered. It's got a slightly better engine and slightly better performance, 985 kilometers an hour. You can push this thing to that limit. 420mm cannons, exactly the same as its predecessor. There is no real reason for you to buy this thing at all. And that's what makes it the world's most useless premium aircraft in 2021. Even the Su-11 is better value than this. World's better value than this. That being said, though, I suppose if you're a British collector and you like Fleet Air Arm vehicles, then this might be for you, but at a steep price of 8,000 golden birds, I find this incredibly hard to recommend, because it's basically exactly the same as the predecessor. Literally exactly the same. You do get a bit of a bonus when it comes to Silver Lion research and stuff. Obviously, it's a premium aircraft, but that is about it. You get 2 500-pound bombs, or you get 2 1,000-pound bombs, or 12 RP3 rockets, and that's really it. There's a lot of emotions tied up in this particular aircraft, its lineage and its sort of heritage. Reminds me of back in the day when War Thunder actually had a competitive edge. It still does today. Don't get me wrong. There's other fantastic aircraft which fulfill this and outperform this aircraft entirely. For example, that F3H just in front of me, F2H, hell of a better aircraft than this thing could ever be. But the powerful armament with those guns, utterly terrible. Those 20mm wing mounted, oh goodness me, incredibly hard. They're like shotguns. It does have an ability to land on carriers. It's got good cockpit visibility. It's got great ground strike payloads, multi-role capabilities, has air brakes and an okay rate of climb. Problem is poor acceleration, obviously tail dragger. I also get feelings of making videos early on in early 2016 and 2014 and so on and so forth. Goes back to the earliest days when War Thunder actually was a little bit more fun, and today it is still a great game, but it's lacking in some of the replayability and sort of the I guess the differences in what the game has and hasn't become quite stark and quite clear. It's not that the game's bad, it's not that the game's any better, but we've had more vehicles, we've had more additions to the game, we've got more game modes, or should I say, we've got different approaches to game modes. Unfortunately, there isn't necessarily a replayability feature here. There isn't really anything else that's changed in War Thunder, at least unless you're talking about new vehicles. And that going back in time and sort of looking at this, and I even included clips during the music segment just earlier, of the very first time that I managed to fly this. I had a great time flying this particular aircraft or its previous predecessor. Unfortunately, they are directly identical, just one has a premium bonus. Slight difference to some of the modifications that don't matter in War Thunder terms, like, you know, for example, your different engine fluids and your cooling and so on and so forth. But for the most part, this aircraft represents a bygone era of that of turn fighting and the early jet stage, where it wasn't necessarily as compressed, where top tier wasn't necessarily focused and replayability across the tiers was actually a thing. Back when you actually got, you know, a team versus a team that fought historically against each other, rather than these mixed battle teams on maps that really can't accommodate or necessarily balance to the playability of some of these aircraft. And for me personally, this represents a time when I actually had hope for my own sort of progression, at least in my own life. You know, I had friends and so on and so forth. You know, I had a purpose. You know, I was becoming a aircraft maintenance engineer by trade. And so looking back on some of the older videos and some of the older footage that I have really starts to be a bit of a tearjerker. And coming back to this aircraft really sort of reinforced that this aircraft is not at all useful. I can recommend it if you really want to take it out as a 7.0 vehicle to go ground pounding with in ground forces. I guess there isn't really any other reason why you should spend 8,000, you know, golden eagles on something like that. Poor performance overall just indicates to me that this vehicle was never really ready. Maybe it should have just come to the live tech tree rather than the premium store. I'm not entirely sure why this thing was even added in the first place. It's not incredibly competitive at all, and I think it really deserves to be put in the main tree like its predecessor, the FB.1. And I'm reminded why I hate this particular aircraft to its nth degree and why I don't play the regular vehicle. I used to love this thing, but it's like the sea venom to me, and everyone knows how that ends. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Anyway, my name is Ash, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, cheerio.